in Niskayuna?
No, I was born and raised right outside of Boston, Massachusetts.
Okay.
And then I lived in Fort Bragg, North Carolina with my first husband.
Okay.
And then I went up to Fort Drum. The Army brought us there, and I loved upstate New York.
So were you an Army wife?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, I've been an Army. Oh, I hate saying this now because it ages me.
Is that a bad term?
No, I've just been one since 1998.
Wow.
So it's just like...
Past the quarter century mark.
When did that happen? Like, when did you get old enough to like...
Okay. What's that like?
It was wild.
Yeah.
Wild. Moving from like a small town, so we lived right outside of like Logan Airport in Winthrop, Massachusetts. I graduated with the class of 97, who I had known my entire life, my husband included. We got married, my ex-husband now, but we got married in the schoolyard at the time when we were 8 years old. And I followed him down to Fort Bragg, and like, I was horrifically ill-prepared. Like, it never occurred to me that like, this is so dumb to say now, but I was like 19, that like people on the Army base like left the base in their uniforms. So like you're pumping gas and there's like guys with like camo. And so we were there for like 4 years, and I remember like going to work and then like having to stop my car and being annoyed because now I was going to be late for work because like 30 guys in full combat gear jumped out of the wood line, ran in front of my car and jumped back in the wood line. And then I was like, oh my God, why is this so normal that I like...
Would that be like a training exercise?
Yes, okay. Yeah.
What do you do during the day?
During the day.
As an Army wife?
Yeah.
What do you do during the day? Now, correct me please if that's coming off as
that's a good question because...
Are you working a full-time job?
So I didn't. A lot of military families did. So like even husband number 2 is in the military because I have a type, very specific.
Okay, militant.
Type. So I always chose to work part-time because his job was so strenuous when he was in the Army, husband number 1. Like, we always would joke that like some people's husbands worked 9 to 5 and ours worked 5 a.m. to 9 p.m. And there were times like they would get a late first call if they came in, if they were past midnight, so they would let them out at 11:58 p.m.
Okay.
And he would just come home like covered in mud. I mean, it was wild. Like I remember one time going to the emergency room, and there's like 4 guys sitting across from me holding M16s. One of them has an eye patch on, and I was like, should you be holding that?
Right.
Like, but the craziest was when we moved here. But when I moved to the Capital District, the state police had like a grant to check to see if you were wearing your seatbelt. And I was, post 9/11 spouse, like I was on Fort Bragg for 9/11. So when I saw the Stadies, I like immediately popped my hood in my trunk and took, because we got stopped all the time.
Yep.
And then the trooper was like, what are you doing? And I was like, I'm letting you check me for a bomb. And I was like, I've lived in a civilian neighborhood for 7 hours.
Yeah.
Like, I'm so like, I don't have a bomb, but we got stopped after 9/11 all the time.
So I was going to say, clearly like everyone else, you remember where you were, what you were doing,
exactly,
but you were actually on the military
I was on
base.
Fort Bragg, yeah, in base housing, Spear Drive.
What was that day like?
It was hard. Yeah, it was hard. It was just, the hardest, like, everything just stopped. Everything just stopped. And, like, no one's husband came home, and everything just felt like it felt for everyone.
Sure.
I mean, I always, I'm getting goosebumps talking about it, but, like, I just feel like that day, it was such a unifying day, and I even think it still is, because we always are like, what were you doing?
I agree.
And it makes everyone's stories interesting. Even if you were in Kansas in Spanish class, like, you stop and hear that person's story. So I was making my coffee on Fort Bragg, and like, that base shut down. It used to be an open base, so like anybody could drive on and off, and then there were gate guards up and helicopters going, and like, I remember my friend calling me and was like, I'm pulling over and just coming to your house because the kids have been in the car for an hour and a half and we're not moving. Wow. And they were just ID checking to get into your housing area, to get on and off base. And like, I remember when the towers first hit, I thought, I need to get what I need because this base is going to close. And it did. Like, I couldn't go to work for like 3 or 4 days because there was just no movement. Yeah.
Scary.
It was scary.
Yeah.
It was wild. And then, I was like, my ex-husband did 2.5 years, deployed for 2.5 years straight of our marriage. He went to Korea, was involuntarily extended and did 18 months. Came home for 2 months and went to Iraq for a year because all bets were off. We were in Afghanistan and Iraq at the same time. So all bets were off.
And what did you do?
Well, I went to college. I moved.
So while he was deployed, you went to college?
When he went to Korea, I moved back to Boston, and I wasn't a spouse. Like some spouses go home every time their husband goes in the field or goes away, and I wasn't there. I've never been that girl. I'm living wherever we are as our home, and that's where I stay. And the military community is like everybody becomes your new family. It's there's nothing like it. There's nothing like it. So, but the problem with the military community is in a matter of a week, your family that you've built gets broken up. So like one of my friends got out of the Army, the other one got orders to Washington, my ex-husband was going to Korea, and our little group that we had built, I would have been there by myself.
Right.
So I went back to Boston for the 1.5 years he was in Korea. I went to college, and then we went up to Fort Drum, and maybe he was with his unit a week or two, and he got orders to Iraq.
How did you end back up here?
I just liked it. I was driving home to Boston. I went over like the Hudson River Bridge, and I was like, I love it here. I loved Fort Drum. I loved Watertown, but I don't know how to milk a cow, so I couldn't stay there. Right. But I loved it. I'd never hiked before, and I was hiking every day, and I was like, what is this weird weather in April? And I was like, oh my God, this is spring, because it always goes from 12 inches of snow and 90 degrees.
Yep.
And I just loved it.
You fell in love with upstate New York. You were driving back to Boston, and you just liked the area, and you just stopped the car.
And I was like, this is where we're going to go.
I have an aunt that just lived in a treehouse in Hawaii.
Yeah.
Because she just said, this is where I want to be.
Yeah, that was exactly what happened. I was like, I just love it here. I didn't want to go back to Boston. I love Boston, but I didn't want to live there.
Yeah.
I didn't want to, I do miss the subway. I don't know why we don't have a trolley.
Well, it's the T. Daryl, who doesn't want to be on the podcast at all, who's our devoted tech, who's overdoing things.
Yeah.
You're overdoing things. He mentioned to me when you walked in that he had seen you before because you were awarded something.
I have.
Tell me about that.
I was last year awarded one of the 25 most outstanding women in the Capital District.
And
so silly.
First of all, congratulations.
Thanks.
Not silly, not at all.
It feels silly.
So tell the dozens of listeners what you do that made you recognized as outstanding.
So it's wild.
Yep.
But
I love it. It's like we work with a lot of causes, one of the most meaningful causes
thank you.
Ever.
We love what we do. So I founded Operation at Ease, which is a service dog organization for veterans and first responders, and all of our dogs come from local area shelters and rescues.
Okay.
Yeah.
You put it to me once in a sentence, though.
Yeah.
How do you describe?
We take dogs from shelters, pair them with deserving veterans and first responders, and provide a free guided training program for post-traumatic stress and mobility service dogs.
But you don't say the D. This is one of the things I found very fascinating.
Yeah,
and
we don't say the D.
I since I first met you, I haven't said that either.
Good.
So, because it makes sense to me. So, the term is that's widely used is PTSD.
Yes, post-traumatic stress disorder.
Okay. You don't use the D.
We don't use the D.
Doesn't seem necessary at all.
Drop the
actually.
D. No,
so.
it's disorder is like. Why? It's so permanent. It's so like, how do you get out of that? You're so disordered. We're like, and to normalize it, because there's not a single person on earth who doesn't have a traumatic event in their life. Mm-hmm. Because the worst thing that's ever happened to you is the worst thing that's ever happened to you. It doesn't have to be combat.
Sure.
It doesn't have to be running into a burning building. It could be, anything. And infidelity, traumatic grief.
Yep.
A child being sick, yourself being sick. So the worst thing that's ever happened to you is the worst thing that's ever happened to you. And post-traumatic stress is just stress after trauma.
So how do you find these dogs?
We have a great working relationship with local area shelters and rescues, and we meet. I never pre-approve dogs until I meet the person.
Okay.
So the dog is picked specifically for that person.
I was going to say, what do you look for in a dog? Other than the fact that it needs rescue.
It needs to be right. It has to come from a local area shelter or rescue. It depends on the person. You know, it's a really neat, like everyone's saving each other concept. You know,
that's what I remember you telling me.
I always go to the I meet the person. What does this person need? Like I just pulled two very different dogs from a local group called Project Paws. And the dogs are completely different, but for the people, I wanted very different things. Sophie, who's now named Ruby Red, is very laid back, just has like this big mastiffy head, easygoing.
I always think of these as big dogs. Is that not
Some
the
of them
case?
are big. I've had a few Chihuahuas.
Really?
Yeah, I've had a few Chihuahuas. I had a guy who bought Somalia, but was afraid of dogs. Somalia, you know.
So he gets the Chihuahua.
Yeah, you got the Chihuahua, and then Ruby is probably about 50 or 60 pounds, but then Reba is maybe like 35 pounds, and she's a dog that can learn arithmetic while you're sleeping at night. You know, like algebra.
Wow.
She's just a smart little girl, but feisty. You know, so. It just depends on the person, but we go to the shelter. We always go on the shelter or rescue's initial assessment and any history they have on that dog.
But you observe the dog in the shelter?
It takes about, our temperament test is about 4 hours long.
Okay.
Beginning to end, 4 hours.
Okay.
Yeah, so I walk, and I hate to say this, so my background's in shelter and rescue. When I moved to Fort Bragg, I started working, that's how I started training dogs. My best friend's neighbor picked up this puppy off the middle of the road, and he weighed 4 pounds, and I named him Buck, and I was just appalled that he was tossed in the street. And then it just started my whole...
That was the first dog you rescued?
That was my first dog I ever rescued. I brought him home, and then after that, it was like game on, because down south, those dogs, I started naming them off the streets I picked them up on.
Yo.
You know, because they were the most. I had 26 animals in post housing. Army post housing has a 2-animal limit.
Okay.
One time, animal control pulled up and was like, "How many animals do you have?" And I thought, "How many do you see?"
So were you the dog lady then on the?
I worked at the largest no-kill shelter in the state.
I mean, on the base.
Yes, I was. Yeah.
You're the dog.
Yeah, there were a lot of abandoned. You know, in hindsight, it was just a lot of. We were too young to be having the lives we had. We're 19, 20, married. Our spouses were fighting wars, you know what I mean, or doing training that was equally as dangerous. You know, like my ex-husband would jump out of an airplane 4 times a month. You know what I mean? And do these crazy EIB training, expert infantry badge, where he would just come home, it'd be 30 degrees out and he's sopping wet, and he'd been like that all day. You know, it's like Hunger Games what we do to these people, and it's all while their brain is developing. Your brain doesn't start developing until you're 23. So there were a lot of my husband got this dog, and now I'm stuck with the kids, and I'm 20. You know, so the dogs lived outside a lot. So I had a little wheelbarrow that I would walk around my housing unit with, and I would feed certain dogs, and you know,
so
periodically take them.
How do you explain how you find your dogs and how you evaluate dogs? How do you find those? And it's not just military veterans. It's I imagine police and fire also. How do you find those people with post-traumatic stress who need this in their life?
We have a wonderful relationship with the Albany Stratton VA.
Okay.
Wonderful relationship, and really our veterans come to us from word of mouth. The veteran community is very tight-knit. There is a lot of, jazz in between the branches when everyone's in, but when you're out, you're just a veteran, and they all take care of each other. It's like one of the most unified groups of people that I've ever seen. So we get a lot of word of mouth, you know.
Or the people who work at the VA who go, hey, why don't you look at
therapist referrals. Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, and we work, one of our requirements is you have to be in therapy and agree to remain in therapy for the duration of our program, because it's hard. It's a year long. It's basically exposure therapy. You know, one of our things that we do is take everyone out to eat. Make sure your service dog knows how to eat and sit at a restaurant, you know.
sort of arranged marriage, and one of them is not human.
It's an arranged marriage. It's a team. It's absolute team. They take care of each other, and because everybody has some problem. Everyone has a problem. The dog has a problem. We do not take perfect dogs. We do not take perfect people. We just find the perfect match.
Okay. So let's talk numbers.
Yeah.
Because that was one of the things I was super impressed with.
Yes.
Just give me the raw number. You can talk about any numbers, whether it's the number of times you've placed a dog with someone a human, the amount of food and how much it costs to feed these dogs or train them, any of that stuff that you want to
I think
bring to light.
My favorite number is 10, because that was the first donation we ever got, was $10.
Okay.
That's my favorite number. 9, because we've been around 9 years.
Okay.
I don't know, and I was just talking to someone about this today, because I refuse to count, because I don't want it to ever be about that.
Yep.
I don't know how many people we've helped. Somebody does. I'm not that person. I don't want them to tell me.
That's very telling.
I don't want it to be about that.
Yeah.
I don't want to get to where we're like, let's get to 100 dogs, and then we're just pulling dogs, or let's get to 200 people. I don't want it. That's not why we're here. So I don't. Someone knows that number. I'm not that person.
Do you have a dog?
I have 3 dogs.
Okay. How hard is it as someone who loves dogs, clearly, and evaluates and sees all of these dogs who need homes, to not have 26 dogs at your house?
Yeah, so I had to stop working in shelters, because compassion fatigue was real. It hit in, and you can't save everyone, and I really tried. There was a period where I really tried. I would bring home everyone from work who I couldn't get to that day, and my spare bedroom was kennels and IVs. So
your neighbors hear a lot of barking?
No.
Oh, okay.
No, because I'm good at what I do.
Oh, all right.
I'm very good at what I do. I always have been like that. Yeah, so
you're like the rescue dog whisperer.
I like anyone with a story.
Okay.
Tell me your story. Yep. I don't want to hear how good your life has been. Give me your grit, you know, and these dogs are nothing but just grit and perseverance, and they still love you. That's what's amazing. They still love you.
Where is Operation at Ease out of now?
So now we're in Rotterdam. Our first class was held in my front yard in Niskayuna.
That's wild.
Yeah.
And your neighbors are understanding?
They were. I mean, it didn't last long like that. I thought I would do maybe 2 or 3 dogs a year, and within 6 months I quit my full-time job because the nonprofit needed my full attention.
Yep.
And I just have a great husband that was like, go for it.
And fully funded by?
Grants and donations and the success of our fundraisers.
So this is where we're going to plug
the community,
because I would love for, anyone to be that $10 person.
Yeah.
So if you want to help the cause, how do you do it?
I mean, there's a lot of ways to help the cause. The easiest way, I always say, I have 5,600 followers on Facebook. If everybody gave me $1 a month, we could exhale.
Oh, yeah. How tight are things?
They're not tight because I'm a money hoarder, but we do a lot. We support the dog for the life of the dog. So we have a veteran who's low income or having a hard time. We pay for everything.
Okay.
Food, vet care, toys.
Wow.
We had a $15,000 surgery when one of our service dogs ate their collar. So we paid for half of that, and then Benson's Pet Center came up and paid for the rest of that.
It's a great point, because sometimes these people who need the dog
benefits
the most also don't necessarily have the financial means.
They don't have the financial means. I don't want to get political, but they have to really wait. My husband right now, his chief retired 38 years, not 10 months ago, and hasn't gotten his pension yet.
Yeah, I don't think it's political. Yeah. Everything moves slow, no matter.
I just think it's, but man, I pay my taxes quarterly, and they take it out on the day.
That's true.
On the day.
No,
so,
that's true.
Sometimes we have a veteran now in the program who is waiting for his disability check, and it was late, and he had no money from him.
Yep.
So it was like, what do you need? And we paid for his kids' back to school supplies. I gave him gas money, groceries. But we paid rents. Whatever they need, we cover. Whatever you'll like this. This is up your alley.
Yeah.
You never have to prove to us you need help.
Okay.
You need help, you ask for help, we will help you.
You're not asking for credit checks.
Ever.
That's great.
Stop telling people, if you need help, reach out. and then make them suck wind and prove that they need help.
Sure.
If you need help, we help. Ask once, and that's it.
That's awesome.
That's it.
I know Bob Hope used to say, he had a joke, that the bank is a place that will lend you money as long as you can prove to them you don't actually need it.
Yes.
It is a little backwards, for sure.
It is, like, and I see them go, like, I'm currently right now working with finding housing for an 82-year-old veteran who did 6 years in the National Guard, honorably discharged, and the VA, our government, doesn't consider him a veteran because he was never brought up on presidential orders. So because they didn't pick his unit,
Yep.
he isn't eligible for veterans benefits.
Oh, that's terrible.
He's living in a trailer, not a camper, a trailer that you pull with no bathroom, no running water.
But he has a dog.
He has a dog.
Good.
He has a dog.
Which is interesting, now that I think of it, probably much like a marriage. One party may outlive the other party.
Yes.
Have you had that happen
Yes.
so far? All right.
We've
What happens in that situation?
So it's a gift and a curse. We've been around a while. You know, like the shelf life of a nonprofit is like 5 years, and we're going on 10 next July, and we're not stopping. You know, so we've lost, unfortunately, dogs and people. So
Yep.
we've lost some of our people. Some of them don't ask for another dog. We have several teams we've given a second dog to, and then I have some people who want a dog in before their dog passes away. So we're looking to put another dog in while their current service dog is
Well, that's
still
just
there.
another traumatic experience.
Yeah,
Obviously.
yeah, it's a huge loss.
If someone was to meet you in Boston, for
Yeah.
example, or somewhere outside of the area, and they said, "Tell me about the place that you're from,"
Yeah,
what would you tell them?
about Niskayuna.
Yeah.
I love Niskayuna. I mean, it's kind of like a little surreal in some ways because I'm still a military spouse. My husband's at Albany, at the 109th Airlift Wing in Scotia.
Okay.
And so there was a time where he would deploy every year for like 3 months. Every year, 3 months. For every Christmas, every winter, because they go to Antarctica. And it's kind of wild to be a military spouse in a civilian community.
Okay.
You know what I mean? Like,
Well, it makes sense because you said previously you'd been on a military
Yeah.
base. It's everybody
has the
military
same
families.
situation.
Yep.
But I love Niskayuna. I love the schools. And not because, like, I always joke with my kids, like, C's get degrees, and I know, like, every engineer in Niskayuna, their ears are burning hearing me say that. But, like, the teachers that I've encountered anyway were so incredibly compassionate every time we had a deployment with my kids. Like, whatever they needed, they got. You know,
Right.
it was never even a question. Like, they made them feel so special because their parent wasn't home.
So this is something I probably don't know. Something I definitely don't notice. Is there a big military presence in Niskayuna?
There's a huge military
terms of-
presence in the Capital District. We have
Okay.
the state command post for the National Guard is right in Latham.
Okay.
And there's like several active duty guard bases right in like a stone's throw from here.
I never thought about that.
Huge.
And then I saw tanks in the Niska Day Parade this year.
Yeah.
And that's the first time I've seen anything like
Yeah.
that.
I'll tell you
in
what.
Town. And I had a moment where I thought to myself, boy, I'm glad they're not here all
Right.
the time.
Yeah. You want to like experience it. Hit up the Glenville Queen on the first weekend of the month, and then
Okay.
you'll be like, oh, okay, because
right down the street from the airport.
Yes.
Yeah.
Right down the street. So.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
I feel like I know a little bit that's going on around town, but I have to still ask the question, are there people and I'm sure I come across as terribly naive.
Yeah.
Are there people in the military that live in Niskayuna?
Yes.
Because I really don't. I mean, I know
Yeah.
over by the bus garage there's something going on.
Yeah.
That's I don't know what it is,
Yeah.
anything. And I know that obviously there's the Schenectady Airport has big planes that every once in a while will circle my house and I'll hurt my neck just watching them go around. That's the extent of
You should watch
of what
them.
I know.
So our 109th Airlift Wing right over in Glenville is the only unit in the world that has planes with skis. They
Really?
land on ice.
I had no idea.
Yep, and they go to Antarctica every year.
That seems really scary to me.
It's
Being in a plane that's landing on the ice?
It's the most dangerous peacekeeping mission because of the weather.
Yeah. No, thank you.
But there's penguins.
other than having people on Facebook each contribute $1, how can people learn more? Where can they find about Operation Online, about Operation at Ease? How can they either volunteer or how can they contribute in some way? What's the best way to...
So you can go to our website, www.operationatease.org.
Okay.
All of our events and fundraising that we have currently going on are listed there. Mm-hmm. We have our big one, Diamonds and Dogs at Glenn Peters Jewelers in November, which is just a silent auction, wine, cheese, little small talk. We also always have public dog training classes, so people in the public with pets can come to take dog training at Operation at Ease, and the money we raise from that supports our free program.
That's awesome.
Yes.
That's a very
so
cool
we stay
program.
Self-sufficient.
Well, I appreciate you coming and sitting with me for a few minutes.
Me.
And Joni Bonilla.
Yes, thank you, sir.